As we continue in Genesis chapter 2, we now come to a moment that stands out in a very powerful way, because for the first time in the entire creation story, God looks at something and says it is not good. And that should immediately get our attention, because up to this point, everything God created has been called good. Genesis 2:18 says, "Then the Lord God said, 'It is not good that the man should be alone. I will make him a helper fit for him.'" And this statement changes the direction of the story, because it shows us that even in a perfect world, before sin has entered, there is something incomplete about man being alone. This is important because it tells us that human beings were not designed to live in isolation. We were created for relationship. God could have said, "Man is fine on his own," but he did not. God himself declares that something is missing. Now, when we hear the word helper, we must be careful not to misunderstand it, because in our culture, the word can sound small or less important. But in the Bible, the word helper is strong, valuable, and even used in other places to describe God himself helping his people. So this is not about inferiority. This is about completion. This is about someone who corresponds, supports, and fits perfectly. Someone who completes what is lacking. Verse 19 then shows us something interesting, because it says, "Now out of the ground the Lord God had formed every beast of the field and every bird of the heavens, and brought them to the man to see what he would call them." And this moment reveals something about Adam's role and responsibility. Adam is given the task of naming the animals. This shows authority, it shows intelligence, it shows responsibility, but it also reveals something deeper. As Adam names each animal, he begins to notice something. Every creature has a pair. Every animal has a match, but Adam does not. Verse 20 makes this clear. But for Adam, there was not found a helper fit for him. So even though Adam is surrounded by life, surrounded by creation, surrounded by animals, he is still alone in a unique way. And this is something many people can relate to. You can be surrounded by people. You can be in a busy place. You can have conversations, activity, and noise around you, and still feel alone, because not all connection is the same. Adam is not just lacking presence, he is lacking a relationship that matches him, a relationship that fits him, a relationship that reflects who he is. And God sees that. God understands that. So God does something deeply personal. Verse 21 says, "So the Lord God caused a deep sleep to fall upon the man, and while he slept, took one of his ribs and closed up its place with flesh." And here we see something different from before. God is not just speaking, he is working directly, personally, carefully. Adam is asleep. He is not involved in the process. This is all God. God is forming something new. Verse 22 continues, "And the rib that the Lord God had taken from the man, he made into a woman and brought her to the man." This is the first woman, not created from dust like Adam, but created from Adam. This shows connection, unity, sameness. She is not separate from him in nature. She is of him. She is like him. And then something beautiful happens. Verse 23 says, "Then the man said, 'This at last is bone of my bones and flesh of my flesh. She shall be called woman, because she was taken out of man.'" This is the first recorded human words in the Bible. And they are words of recognition, joy, connection. Adam sees her and immediately knows, this is different, this is right, this is what was missing, this is the one who matches me. Verse 25 then closes the chapter with something powerful. "And the man and his wife were both naked and were not ashamed." This is a picture of complete openness. No fear, no hiding, no insecurity, no shame. They are fully known and fully accepted. This is how life was meant to be. Relationship without fear, connection without walls, love without shame. But we know something is about to change, because in the next chapter, sin will enter. And when sin enters, shame will follow. Hiding will follow, brokenness will follow. But here, in Genesis 2, we see the original design. Now let's ask the question we always ask. What does this show us about God? It shows us that God sees our needs, even before we fully understand them. It shows us that God values relationship. It shows us that God creates with purpose and intention. It shows us that God brings completeness where something is missing. And it shows us that God is personal. He is not distant, he is involved. Now, what does this show us about us? It shows us that we are not meant to live alone. It shows us that we are created for connection. It shows us that we are designed for relationship. And it shows us that true fulfillment is not found in isolation, but in connection that reflects God's design. And maybe this is where this becomes personal, because many people today feel alone. Even in a connected world, even with social media, even with conversations, there is still loneliness. There is still a feeling of something missing. Genesis explains why. because you were not designed to live alone. You were designed for relationship. But here is something even deeper. Even human relationships are not the final answer, because before Adam needed Eve, Adam had God. So while human relationships matter deeply, the greatest relationship is still with God, because no person can fully fill what only God can. So today, remember this: you were not made to be alone. You were made for connection. You were made for relationship, and that begins with God.